Ninjas are mammals. Ninjas fight all the time, and the purpose of the ninja is to flip out and kill people. These are common facts that everybody knows, but one thing that most people do not know is why there's no more Ninja Gaiden games, because on this episode of What Happened, we'll explore... No, wait, everyone knows why. It's because of these things. Regardless, why don't we slice and dice through this dark period of Ryu Hayabusa's career that has, at least for now, put him into retirement in favor of more, how shall we say, fresher faces. But make no mistake, early on in the ninja's second lease on life, the Gaiden franchise was built on some shaky foundations, as there was a lot going on at Tecmo and Team Ninja that cast a gloomy shadow over the Hayabusa clan. So grab your katanas, prep your one fire nimpo, and lock on with your bows, because we're about to find out what happened to Ninja Gaiden 3.
You so-called ninja are ghosts of a forgotten age. You don't belong here.
It's 2010, and we're balls deep into the 7th generation with the rise of such games like Fallout, Gears, and etc. Conversely, on the other side of the globe, the Japanese gaming industry was going down. Way down. So Capcom, or more accurately Inafune, was leading the charge to appeal to the West as hard and as fast as possible, not stopping for any reason. And pretty much every other publisher in the country, aside from Nintendo, followed suit. This resulted in a glut of titles you have seen and will see in future episodes of this very show. Tecmo, despite their most popular franchises being very Japanese, what with Fatal Frame, Dead or Alive, and yes, Ninja Gaiden, also fell under this spell, farting out the dreadful Quantum Theory, the 4th in the Quantum Anthology. As discussed on a previous episode, Tomonobu Itagaki was fired by Tecmo shortly after the release of Ninja Gaiden 2, the competent but still less fondly remembered sequel to the first Gaiden on the Xbox, and even less fondly remembered than the better version of that, Ninja Gaiden Black. Now, Itagaki held a lot of sway within Tecmo, but his power was not absolute. Every time he would finish a Ninja Gaiden game while pledging his undying support for Bill Gates and his Xbox burgers, Tecmo was having none of it. They had a smaller team release updated versions of said Ninja Gaiden games on the PS3, which Itagaki wanted nothing to do with and would actively take his time to mock. Sigma 1 and 2 were headed up by Yosuke Hayashi, who you'll unfortunately remember from our episode about the baby. The Sigma version seemingly made changes at complete random, adding new stuff here, but also taking stuff away from the Xbox originals, all running exclusively on the mighty, citation needed, Cell processor. This is because, unlike the PS3, which was a success in Japan, the Xbox and the Xbox 360 and pretty much every Xbox after that was not. Japanese companies at this time wanted their products to be successful in both the East and the West, not just one, and having their two biggest franchises exclusive to the Xbox was seen as a bit of a mistake. So, when Itagaki was gone, Tecmo now had free reign to do what they wanted. Thus, Ninja Gaiden 3's first reveal was fairly subtle, resulting in this one promotional image of Ryu, bathed in both darkness and blood, which just so happened to be the best two things you could be bathed in. This certainly had a different feel than the previous pieces of key art for prior games, and would be the first indicator to fans that things were going to change. Obviously, the Gaidens under Itagaki focused on certain priorities, with roughly 99% of the game revolving around punishing high-speed combat, with the other 2% all being about the storytelling, which, by the way, there's a 1% margin of error for pie charts like this. So it stands to reason that the first new all-original game without the oatmeal god would take a different tact, and once the Tecmo marketing machine started revving up, Hayashi was, to his credit, quick to point out said different tact. We're not just focused on the high-speed, crazy battle stuff all the time. We really want to give players a lot of undulation in gameplay. We want players to feel the drama, then have a bit of a break, then go back to drama, almost like you're watching a movie. This was not a lie. Ninja Gaiden 3 featured way more story than all the previous entries, and Tecmo made a big deal about Masato Kato, who wrote the story scenarios for the NES trilogy, as a big creative force on this project. Now, the NES games were milestones in storytelling during the 8-bit era, so heralding this loud and clear was warranted, but fans of Itagaki's work were obviously trepidatious about this change. As Hayashi and Tecmo began speaking more in depth about what type of meal they had cooking, the fears of those hardcore fans were getting more founded with every interview. Now, it goes without saying, but this was a franchise that was famously designed to be harder than a ninja's boner, going all the way back to the NES, and in the Itagaki era would even actively gaslight the player for wanting to experience it at a lower difficulty.
Master Ryu, or should I say, young ninja Ryu Hayabusa. It seems I have greatly overestimated you.
Hayashi, and obviously Tecmo marketing, kinda wanted to move away from that. The one thing with this whole difficulty issue is that players got used to the game, and because it has such a long history, good players did get used to it, and the gap between casual players, standard players, versus the hardcore has just been widening and widening as the series progressed. This then led them to focus more on the narrative and less on the combat, making the game more accessible to a bigger audience. Now, designing a game to appeal to more players with many difficulty levels or accessibility settings if you're making a brand new IP is advisable, but changing things up for the third entry, technically the sixth, in a long-standing series of games which prided themselves on being ball-slicingly hard is never advisable. It's hard to imagine a brand new player looking at Ninja Gaiden 3 and saying, yeah, I'll jump in here, I mean, why not? And it's even harder to imagine a longtime fan going, shit, yeah, I love all these changes. This is an incredibly difficult thing to balance, and for more reasons we'll get into later, Team Ninja was not up to the task. You know, actually, let's just get into those reasons right now. Tecmo was always seen as a B or C tier publisher when compared to companies like Capcom or Namco. Thus, in 2008, around the time Itagaki was hoofed out, they merged with the masters of button mashing, Koei, in a bid to bolster both companies' standings. Shortly thereafter, they kicked off their big Western push, and it's very likely these changes to the Ninja Gaiden formula were maybe due to— they were due to appealing to the West.
You're out of your mind.
Meanwhile, the Japanese company that was kind of responsible for all this was Capcom, with their many failed attempts to cater to the West, with DMC Devil May Cry being chief among them. When asked about competitors like this, Hayashi was fairly humble and grounded, unlike Itagaki, who most likely would have talked shit. You can say that Devil May Cry is a competitor to Ninja Gaiden, and I think that's good for us. When we make this game and put it out, the DMC team will take a look at it and pick up from it, and try to beat that, and their game will come out and we'll come back and we'll try to beat them. This healthy competition helps us set a standard in our games, helps us improve, gives us the edge. It's good for everyone in the action game genre to do that, because then we can keep pushing and pushing and pushing. It's good for the whole industry. So, who will win in this competition to win the West? Well, nobody, really. While DMC had its own set of problems,
What are you talking about?
Ninja Gaiden 3 went through its own gauntlet of big troubles. One of the most egregious is that its multiplayer mode, a first for the series, will be locked behind an online pass, which technically doesn't exist anymore, even though it kinda still exists. For those that don't remember, if you bought a used copy of a game, you would lack the code that would access the MP, so you most likely would need to shell out extra to unlock it. The other mistake, which at the time, believe me, seemed like a mistake, was announcing that an improved version, Razor's Edge, was headed to the upcoming Wii U, 4 months before the release of Ninja Gaiden 3 Vanilla, or, Blunt Edge, I guess. Telling fans up front that, yeah, we're gonna be fixing this shit, but it won't be until later and it won't be for a console you're interested in is ballsy. Stupid, but ballsy. This announcement came at around November of 2011, and Ryu was rapidly Naruto running to his late March release date, which, as we've covered before, is usually a warning sign for big releases. Companies' fiscal years finish up at the end of March, so releasing a product around then means that sometimes, but not all the time, profits are trying to be squirted out at the very last minute to boost fiscal earnings, even if the game wasn't ready. And Ninja Gaiden 3 wasn't ready. For brevity's sake, here is a small list of the things that were missing or cut from Ninja Gaiden 3. So yeah, going into its launch on March 20th, things were not exactly looking good from a fan hype perspective. The overall scores for the game dipped considerably under 2 and overwhelmingly for 1, with many citing it as a shallow imitation of those previous games. Sales-wise, however, Gaiden 3 seems to have been a bit of a success, selling more than 600,000 copies worldwide, which, considering all the cut corners and subsequent Razor's Edge releases, most likely turned a profit. Hell, it was pegged as the main reason why earnings for that year were up 69%. Nice. Hayashi and his team, however, knew they had made thousands of mistakes and were quick to admit where they faltered. It seems like we made a Japanese hamburger for the West. Maybe as a Japanese developer, we need to make good Japanese food, and that's what people are wanting from a Japanese developer. With the state the industry is in right now, studios are doing everything they can to basically stay above water. Everyone wants answers for how to move forward and how to make things work in the future. Gameplay will be first. We're not going to offer burgers anymore. We're going to offer you damn good sushi. Now, going back to Razor's Edge, they certainly did improve the game in a number of ways, adding more moves, weapons, increased difficulty, but fuck all of that, Momiji was added as a playable character. Yeah, there's Kasumi and Ayane, I guess, but more importantly than that, Momiji. Don't worry, Momiji, your Momiji is all that Momiji's. Again, for brevity's sake, here's a short list of all the improvements made in Razor's Edge. All this extra work actually improved scores when it released at the Wii U launch, and saw similar reception when it eventually released a year later on the 360 and PS3. Now, if we're being honest, most of these improvements were band-aids on bullet holes, because the focus on story and less on combat was still ingrained into the design, so it still lagged behind its predecessors in a number of fundamental ways. Ninja Gaiden 3 was a great learning experience for us. We were able to understand what fans expect from a Ninja Gaiden game. After Ninja Gaiden 3 came out, we released Razor's Edge, which we believe went a long way towards appeasing core fans, and the response from that has been pretty positive. So from our end, it was definitely a learning experience from what fans expect from a Ninja Gaiden game. That's actually refreshingly candid. Unfortunately, while Razor's Edge certainly did bring back a bit of sheen to Ryu's katana, it was just as quickly dulled once again when Inafune and Spark Unlimited's Yaiba, Ninja Gaiden Z, did far more damage to the franchise, posting even lower scores and, more importantly, far worse sales numbers. While this was technically a weird spin-off, it was another title whose entire inception was to appeal to the West, with crass humor, over-the-top gore, and profanity that felt very at odds with the franchise's usual serious tone. Unlike Gaiden 3, though, everything went smoothly with this game's development, as it was Spark Unlimited's second time trying to revive a Japanese IP before being closed the very next year when they failed to procure any additional projects after Yaiba. Team Ninja, unfortunately, were not out of the woods yet. Even though Dead or Alive 5 was well received for the most part, very few aspects of Dead or Alive 6 were well received at all, which we might cover in a future episode. However, they have found consistent success with Neo finally serving up the sushi that Hayashi had promised. And while that's great, these two back-to-back stinky adventures have made it unclear if Ryu Hayabusa will be unsheathing his sword anytime soon. If you know of any other games, movies, or etc. that are fit to stand and take abuse on our stage, let me know in the comments below or flying swallow your way, that sounds awful, to the Flophouse VIP Patreon to nominate the subject of your choosing for an upcoming episode. See you next time, and thanks for watching.
How disappointing. I had hoped the mighty Dragon Ninja would have put on more of a show.